New York has now become ground zero for the crime crisis plaguing the U.S. Despite a mayor elected to crack down on crime, the new Soros-supported Manhattan DA wants to give more power to criminals. DA Alvin Bragg claims he's, quote, surprised by the pushback to his radical policies that include dramatically lowering or dismissing sentences for a wide range of cases, including violent crime. Here's the DA.
Gun crime is on the rise. Domestic violence is on the rise. We've got sexual assaults. That's what's going on with the status quo. So we know we need a change to address that. This is going to make us safer. It's intuitive. It's common sense. I don't understand the pushback.
Make us safer. Here now is retired NYPD detective and former First Deputy Sheriff Commissioner Oscar Odom. Oscar, great to see you again. Let me just read a couple of these measures in the memo that the DA sent out to his assistant DAs. Armed robbers who use guns or other deadly weapons to stick up stores and other businesses will be prosecuted only for petty larceny, which is a misdemeanor. Convicted criminals caught with weapons other than guns will have those felony charges downgraded to misdemeanors, and assistant DAs should use their judgment and experience to evaluate the person arrested and identify people who suffer from mental illness, who are unhoused, who commit crimes of poverty, or who suffer from substance abuse disorders. Your thoughts on all this? Is this just going to make crime worse?
Most definitely. I'm glad that at least now he's coming to the round table, because the NYPD police commissioner announced what was taking place, and we're here to combat crime, not to deal with stuff like that as far as letting people out. The data will reveal itself and show that certain times, certain criminals are repeating offenses over and over again, and the public is suffering. There are people out there dying. There are victims. So therefore, you should also look at a witness impact statement and also a victim statement and see what they have to see. I wonder if his constituents, the people who put him in office, especially on the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side, know that he's going to let people right back out on the streets again if they commit these type of crimes.
Well, and you know, all violent crimes are not gun crimes. I mean, he's focusing on the gun crimes, but there are a lot of people that get stabbed in New York. There are a lot of people that get pushed into the subway. We just had a wonderful guy who tried to stop a crime from being committed, killed over the weekend. He was pushed, or I guess it was on New Year's Day, pushed in front of a subway train by a bunch of thugs. So just to dismiss those crimes as kind of misdemeanors, even when people get killed, it's just extraordinary. And cops now, Oscar, are having their arrest records scrubbed from certain information that might make it easier. The scrubbing might make it easier for the perps. That's really outrageous.
Most definitely, and it's the public that's going to suffer from certain events like this. And the thing is, it will also hurt morale again, because here it is, if I'm locking someone up who is a danger to society, and you don't at least keep them and get some sort of treatment, as opposed to just letting them back out to injure someone else, we have a lot of issues. The data itself will reveal, they should track the data of people who are let out for these different types of offenses and what type of offenses they commit in the future, and also the impact that it has on other families and also other citizens with this public safety measure. Public safety is the key to survival. It's critical for economic development, for stability, for businesses to continue. We must have public safety. And if you don't do that, there's going to be issues.
That's exactly what Mayor Adams said before he got elected on that platform. But he came out and defended Bragg over the weekend. He came out and said he's standing behind his man. I mean, how can you support something that's in total contradiction to what you were elected on?
Right. Well, the thing is, what I would say is what I would say that I would have to hear that. But what I think is that Mayor-elect Adams, well, not even electing one, Mayor Adams is looking at the fact that probably the treatment programs that will take place there, but not so the arrest. Because as he stated before, too, people who are committing crimes, just like he's bringing back the plainclothes unit to make sure to reduce the gun violence and make sure that we apprehend those who commit those type of offenses, because they do not need to be out there committing this over and over and over again.
It sounds like you're willing to give the mayor a break for now. At what point do you say, forget it, Mayor, you're a fraud?
Well, the thing is, I would have to look at the data, but knowing Eric and knowing his experience and also working with him in the NYPD, I don't see it going any other way. From my personal experiences, I think that it will be positive and that he will ensure the safety of the public, because he knows what it's like to be on both sides of the law, to have something happen to you. So my confidence is in the mayor that he will do the right thing.
But what if the DA continues to butt up against his policies of cracking down on crime?
Well, then that will have to we have to also deal with the voters, because the job of a prosecutor is to prosecute, not to legislate. So his job is not to legislate different crimes and the penalties. So we would have to address that. And the voters will look at that. I'm quite sure the voters will be alarmed if people keep on robbing them and all of a sudden they're back on the streets again and people are dying. There will be an uproar.
Well, at some point, he's got to show more backbone than he has so far. It's early days yet. He just became mayor. He was just inaugurated. But we'll wait and see. At some point, he's got to stand up to this DA, because these memos are just outrageous. Oscar, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.